All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sean with BlueRidgeSilverHound. Hope everyone's having a great evening. I wanted to take some time to candidly talk about the current state of the hobby. What I really wanted to take some time to talk about, other than the state of the hobby, which I think is just robust. I mean, it's a great time to be a part of the hobby. But also talk about, I guess, some of the pitfalls or traps or roadblocks or whatever you want to call it that takes some of our newest esteemed hobby goers and collectors and making them change their mind and maybe getting out of the hobby and just calling it quits. Which unfortunately, I've seen a few people over the years where I've tried desperately with all my might to get them to refocus, take some time off, to get them back in the game. But I've seen way too many good people, both old and new, get out of the hobby for some pretty valid reasons. And I think it gets to a point where either you've been doing it too long and you're finally burnt out, which, we all get that way. There was a period of time where I took like 4 or 5 years off after I did my stint, as a dealer, a traveling dealer, back in the early 2000s. I ended up taking some time off. I moved to Florida, reassess things up here because that was important, but at the same time, I don't know if I was going to get back into coin collecting or education or anything like that. My dad had passed away in 2005. It was a very defining moment for me, as most people would see it as such. Wasn't sure if I was to get back into collecting, but he was the one that got me into it in the first place. So after a little bit of time and dedication and just kind of recharging the batteries, this 4 or 5 years, I said, let's see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and get back into it. At that point, I moved back home to Nevada, and only because that's where my mom was, and we ended up moving to California. And then, I met my wife and all that great stuff. And the rest of it is just ancient history and a good old folklore of Blue Ridge. But, I had to step away from the hobby because I wasn't loving what it was about in my life anymore. Before, it was just a hobby. And then it turned into a business. And then when you take something that you're very impassioned about, and it becomes a business to you, then you have to be a little bit more serious about it. Sometimes a little cynical. And I fell out of love of numismatics. And ultimately, I thought that was just going to, be the demise in my life. I mean, honestly, I would probably not be Blue Ridge Silverhound if I didn't take that time off. But I got back into it, saw it as a hobby, and then decided to do the YouTube channel, and it became fun again because, I got to share the information that I know, and just let you guys know, I don't know 100% of everything there is about the hobby. So, there are people who are a little bit jaded that come into the hobby in some capacity, and it automatically thinks they have it figured out when they haven't began to, to crawl before they're walking tall. But I jotted down a few things. I was going to shoot at the hip, but I figured I'd go on script about what I wanted to say. The 3 reasons why people are leaving the hobby today. Because I'm using today because the landscape of actually being involved in the hobby is so much more different than it was 20 years ago when the internet was in its very I guess, primal infancy, as you would call it, and a lot of the information wasn't nearly out there as it is today, where there's a multitude of various websites and resources at your disposal. But I would say because of the internet, we have a lot more exposure to information. I would like to say that a good chunk of that information is valid. It's the good stuff. It's stuff that you need to hear in order to make yourself a better collector. But at the same time, especially with social media, there's a lot of bad information that gets strewn about. And then, unfortunately, if you're new to the hobby and your first fork in the road, you take the right path, and you end up with this joker that doesn't really know what they're talking about, or they're talking about things that's way above their level of understanding. I think once you get into like varieties and errors, that's where things kind of change. With every type of U.S. coin, there are master attributors. The large cents. You have your Sheldon, who is a master attributor at die pairings. You have Newcomb, who specialized in braided hair and coronet heads. I mean, to a lot of you watching, I think 99.5% of you probably all think that's pretty Greek, and it is. It was to me. But, the type of information that you receive today is very glorified. If not, maybe the intent of it was to, reel in an audience member, because, we're on YouTube these days. There's TikTok and a bunch of other different video-based social media platforms that sometimes it could be a one-way conversation. Like that person talking to you, will tell you everything that you need to know, but you don't have the opportunity or the capability to ask questions to that person, especially if they're not on a live stream. And I've come to find out that for every one good, valid voice of reason, educator, mentor, teacher, however you want to classify it, there's 10 others that feed you just, the line of BS that first sounds incredibly intelligent, but, as you go along, you get to meet other people, you're really grasping hard at the first bits of education that you had received when you first started coin collecting, months ago or weeks ago or, years ago or whenever that is. And, there are individuals that have a hard time of letting go. All right. There's one specific person that pops in to my videos every so often, but he also has his own YouTube channel, and he does sales on eBay and all that stuff. But he is just firmly grasping on the knowledge from an old 40, 50-year-old plus handbook, which didn't have a lot of the appropriate type of information that you need to know about varieties and errors. And he feels like he's indebted to that author, who over the years, has done many volumes and many editions of his book. But it wasn't only until after the turn of the century when things got out there on social media. There was a Facebook, a MySpace page out of all things. Yes, I was Tom's friend at one point, where people were really bashing on the book because, a good 80% of the content in there was not the type of information that you need for today's standards. It's the very guy that said that a poor man's double die is worth thousands of dollars, and it's super rare, when that is totally not the case. So the whole information age, can really leave a bad taste in someone's mouth if the information is not of accurate nature, I guess, if I'm trying to be just kind of like fancy with my words right now. But yeah, one of the big reasons why people leave the hobby is that they had received bad information and they're not willing to let go of that information, and then they end up being on the receiving end of a lot of other people who are experts in the field, trying to tell that individual that, no, you're wrong. You have to look at it this way. You have to read this book. You have to read this website. It's just, I don't know. People are very proud, all right, when it comes to their educational upbringing. And it doesn't matter what it is. You could be an electrician. You're part of the Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And, someone will say, well, I wouldn't have gone to that technical school to learn this because they don't do that, and it's like, man, I just spent a lot of money. And I invested a lot of time to learn that education. I feel indebted. All right. And, sometimes the way that you're brought up in your industry or in a hobby or whatever, and, coin collecting is just a hobby, unless you want it to be a business where you're actually making money, you're managing books and all that great stuff, then, then that, I guess, you would be a little bit more defensive about it. Another thing that's kind of driving people away from the hobby right now is just the overall inventory situation. Now, it's not exactly a lack of inventory, although we are in a situation where high quality examples of anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be like a really nice type coin that you just don't see much of anymore in the secondary market. It could be a piece of paper money currency, or it could even be precious metals. Just like trying to find a good 10-ounce bar, from a vintage artisan or someone that does pours, or a company like Engelhard, one of the earliest forms of their bars, is a little bit tough to find these days. Because people really do see these things as true assets. And with the run-up in crypto and the investment scene with GameStop and AMC and all that stuff, people are making money. And then they're cashing out of all of these intangibles, and then they go and buy the physical stuff, and now we're running out of decent inventory. We're never gonna run out of inventory, but obviously we are a little bit light these days, and you just look at the auction scene, or some of the bigger coin retailers out there, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So that's kind of like the inventory side of it is like, man, there's nothing to buy out there, so I'm just gonna take it easy and just probably look at, collecting sports cards or something like that. Not sports cars. That could be a pretty pricey hobby, but sports cards, football, baseball, basketball, that sort of thing. And another part about the whole inventory situation is has everything to do with the way in which you obtain it. Because, we've talked here in recent weeks, I would say probably within the last year, pretty hot and heavy, the U.S. Mint, all right? The U.S. Mint and all of these specialized coins and products that they offer, some of it is not easy to obtain, especially the low mintage items. And that could also leave a pretty bad taste in someone's mouth, who's just getting into the hobby, loves the idea of being able to buy a rare coin from the U.S. Mint with a low mintage and then have that opportunity to either collect it or go and sell it to make some money, so that way they can buy some of the other things in the hobby. So the inventory is kind of like a loaded topic with a bunch of different, directions you could go in that. But I would say, I talked to someone, I think it was right around October of last year, and inventory wasn't really that big of an issue in October. But he had made mention that he just has a hard time getting getting the coins that he wants, because he prefers to buy about as local as he could get, but he lives so far away from a coin shop that, because of his inability to actually touch and feel actual coins in person, that he ultimately got out of the hobby. I'm like, well, yeah, you know, aren't you being a little hasty about it? You can always go online and, you know, try and find stuff that way. But he was pretty adamant. And he was an older guy. And then, you know, sometimes older guys are set in their ways. So you really can't, you can't really stand in front of them expecting them to stop what they're doing and actually listen to you. Some of them can just be really, really gung-ho about it and just move on from it. So that was, I would say that's a more recent, kind of more unreasonable look at how inventory has driven away a collector or an investor or a stacker. And probably the final thing that kind of is driving some newer collectors out of the hobby has to be inflation. Inflation's really big right now, and some would say, well, there's no justification for it. Silver's $28 an ounce. So why are these dealers charging $35 to $40 for generic rounds? I'm like, well, you know, there is a supply shortage of physical metal out there. And, you know, people are making do with what they could grab hold of, even at the expense of paying the gentleman's premium is what I call it, where, you know, you're working with a coin dealer and you know that they barely have any supply on hand. So, you know, they're doing you a favor by offering up, you know, what they have, you know, and trying to be reasonable about it. But all the coin dealers I've been going to lately, they have no physical silver. I went to a coin shop earlier today, and all he had was 2 handmade pours that were, I think they were like a 1/4 ounce or something like that, little tiny cute bars. And I'm like, is that all the silver you got? And he's like, yeah. But he was asking a pretty good premium off of the those bars. But yeah, inflation is incredible, and it can be cruel sometimes. Because a lot of people that get into the hobby, like right now, you know, they're working with the amount of money that they have. You know, that seems a little redundant, but you know, people make X amount of money. They make X amount of dollars per week, and you know, that has to like put food on the table. You know, if you have a family, you have to take care of the kids and the wife and, you know, the pets and all that stuff. And then you have kind of like your fun money or me money. And that could be, you know, that could be as little as like $30-$40, or it could be 100, it could be 500, you know, depending on where you're at in your career and, you know, all that great stuff. Or you might have more than that. I don't know. But when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to look online and I'm going to see what's on there. You're on eBay, you're trying to find the least expensive 1 ounce bar. And it's like, oh my God, I'm paying $33, $5 over a spot, you know, and it's like, it's not even that nice of a bar. You know, and, the concept of that is a little bit lost, you know, to a lot of people that don't quite understand why inflation happens in the hobby. Okay, we saw quite a bit of I was going to say inflammation. You know, that's probably why my bones are all stiff right now, or my joints. But inflation, you know, happens when you least expect it to. Like in 2009, when price of silver jumped way above like $50 an ounce. There was a lot of fear of missing out. Okay, and then when fear of missing out happens, supply runs very tight, prices shoot up, and then, you know, things just kind of spiral out of control. And then when that happens, you get a lot of really upset people that are all of a sudden waving the white flag. You know, it's like, man, I can't find my silver. I can't find my ammunition. You know, I can't buy food at my favorite grocery store because everything is like shooting up through the moon. And I just don't know how to deal with it, you know. And it's like, well, last time I checked, I'm not making more money. It's not like my employer said, oh yeah, we're going to give you a 25% raise because we're dealing with inflation in our country, you know, and food is costing more, and, Electricity is costing you more. It's all this other stuff. So it's a compounding daily, I guess, living issue that we all have to kind of make do with. But saying that it's not fair that inflation exists at my coin shop or online is a little bit unreasonable, because there's so much demand and there's so little supply. And if you took your Econ 101 in college or in high school or whenever you did that, that there is a supply and demand force at work. When supply is really high, demand's less, and that therefore prices are low on that item. And then if the reverse holds true, where demand's like way up here, supply's down here, then obviously prices spiral out of control. But with social media, it's put a lot of tension in people's minds that there is truly a lot of fear of missing out. And this wasn't really a concept that a lot of people were in tune with as recently as about 10 years ago, when people were saying, oh, it's FOMO, FOMO, FOMO. And then, it began to stick in people's minds, not only in the coin hobby or precious metals, but in all things. It's like, if you're not there to buy it, even though you don't need that item, you still want to get it because there's always someone else that wants it and will pay double what you had paid for it. So, again, that's just the world we live in, and it's not going to change. The more advertising, the more that, social media puts this information out there in front of you, the more that it's going to feed and fuel you into wanting to be a part of that event or that process or whatever the case may be. Me personally, I'm growing tired of it. I'm sick and tired of all the arbitrage and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's like, maybe I'm a little bit jealous because I wasn't there to get my pieces of 8, I suppose, and then therefore I'm a little bit, out of my element, and I decide, well, maybe it just wasn't meant for me, or I'm sick and tired of it. I'm just gonna get out of the hobby altogether because, I'm like 0 for 10, and trying to get some of these coins through the U.S. Mint. But that's what I wanted to talk about. I could tell you guys this right now: if you are staying in the long haul, I'm still a proponent to education. All right, make sure you educate yourself. Make sure you get, it's like going to a doctor. Okay, what's this lump on my neck? You probably want a few different opinions about it. Okay, same with numismatics education. You go out there and you get a few different people's opinion or their professional, advice on what you have. And then, that'll make you a much more savvier individual in the hobby and makes you a smarter shopper. You'll be able to identify the deals like from miles away. And you'll be able to be in a great position to really grow, to really succeed. And it all starts up here, because if you got the mindset and if you have the thick skin, to kind of get through all of the market noise and the people's various, opinions, and sometimes people are very negative about it, and that's where you don't want to be. Just see yourself out the door, and then go on to the next place where you could get the information you need. But that's what I wanted to talk about. Not really a rant, but just wanted to reassure you that things are going to be okay. We're kind of in a strange spot in the hobby where, yes, everything is expensive. We are in tight supply of a lot of things, and there's probably more information that you need about the hobby. And some of it's right, some of it's wrong. But again, please do get various different opinions from a lot of different people, and then you'll have like a good 50% or higher of those people that have told you the same information, and if that's the case, more likely it's true. But that's it. A quick little Wednesday night PSA session, about the state of the hobby, I guess, if that really means anything. Thank you guys for all your support. I've gone on this strong over like 1,400 videos, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. So again, it's real simple. I don't offer memberships. I don't do auctions. I don't do any of that stuff because, you know, I'm more on the educational part of it, and that's where I want to stay. I want to stay in my own lane where it's better, it's safer, and you guys get a lot more benefits out of it. Like, it's worth more to you than, you know, paying up for something and you don't know if you got a good deal. Just wait until you go to a coin dealer. You're like, man, I really need to unload this coin or this set or something. And then you find out that you paid 5-6 times too much for the item. And that's not what we want, right? We want all of the correct information coming to us. But that's it. Have a great night, guys. I'm going to head to bed because I am just like tired. You guys take care. Coinaholics. Yeah, we are discovering together each and every single day. Thank you for being a part of my team. All right. Good night.